Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Heart to Heart. My name is Madiha, and we're joined today by Sister Masma Jaffer, who is a resident alima from Stanmore Mosque, and she also has qualifications in counselling. She's counselled hundreds of couples, individuals, and families on various issues and topics in her years. Heart to Heart is a show all about our viewer. If you've got any questions, any problems, any issues at all, please do email us on hearttoheart@safirtv.com. So thank you for joining us today, Sister Masma. I'm going to go straight into the first question. We've had loads of questions from our viewers, and all sorts of topics and issues that people have been emailing in with. Here I have a 15-year-old girl who has said, "Assalamu alaikum, Sister Masma. Since I was a child, I've been fearful of my father. Sometimes he becomes violent, other times he is really kind and nice. As a young girl of 15, I don't think I can take this abuse much longer, especially because I don't know how or when he will flip out on me. My hair has fallen out, my teeth are really bad, I don't sleep properly, and my brothers are pretty useless when it comes to helping me out. My mum died from cancer a few years ago, and at first my relatives were helping us out, but now they're too busy to even call me. Do you think I should leave home, or should I get someone to speak to my father?"
Wow.
That's really sad.
It's very
sad.
Yeah. She's given us a lot of information, but at the same time, there's a lot of questions I have. She talks about her father being violent, but she doesn't say how that plays out. So does he shout and scream, or is there actual physical violence involved there? I mean, if there's physical violence and she's actually fearful of him from the perspective of being physically abused, then I think she needs to get someone involved very quickly, be it the authorities, the mosque, her relatives, her brothers, whoever it is. I think she needs to make sure that she's not in a situation where she's in danger physically.
Is physical abuse worse than emotional abuse?
Not at all, but physical abuse is it is something that is not subjective. It's like, if you hit someone, that is wrong. Emotional abuse, mental abuse, is very subjective. So someone may say something to me, and I may be totally okay with it, and they may say the same thing to you, and you may feel like you're being, being degraded by that. Right. So it's very subjective. So that's why when it comes to physical abuse, it's very easy to say, hang on a minute, this is wrong.
Right.
Yeah. With mental and emotional abuse, it's up to the person whether they feel like they're being abused or not, right, and how much they can handle, and what is okay in their minds, if that makes sense. But there's a lot that, she talks about abuse. She doesn't say whether it's physical, mental, emotional. So again,
she says sometimes he becomes violent, other times he's really kind and nice.
Yeah. So it sounds like he's got some sort of anger issues. Yeah. Again, it says this was from when she was a child. So although she talks about her mother passing away recently, it seems like these issues were there before, even when her mother was alive. So how did she handle them then? Was her mother, sort of safeguarding her from it? How did it play out then? Maybe she can talk to her father when he's when he's not angry, when he's in a good mood, and explain to him how she feels when he does flip out, is the words I think she used. So it's really important to try to have those conversations as well. If she she feels she can approach him. She also talks about a lot of things where she's saying her hair is falling out, she's unable to sleep. So there's it seems like there's a lot of stress and worry that she's going through, which is causing all of that. So again, maybe getting help for herself from a counselling perspective is important. So she's got someone that she can talk to, and just be supported.
Is there anyone at school, do you think she could?
Yeah, so I'm sure. The thing is, it's how much you want other people to know, especially outside the family.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel that they're being disloyal to the family, or they feel torn when they talk about the family outside the family. So she may want to try to handle it within the family, but again, if physical abuse is there, I think she needs to get someone outside involved. That's very, very important. That she's not put in a place of danger. She talks about her brothers being useless.
Mm.
Again, she doesn't say what she's expecting from them. Does she want them to talk to her father? Does she want help? Because at one point she talks about her relatives coming to help when her mum passed away. What sort of help did she get? Was it help in household matters?
Mm-hmm.
Does she feel that it's all on her? Because it sounds like she's the only girl in the house.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what's stressing her out rather than the violence of her father. Maybe the violence of her father is an added thing onto everything else that she's been lumbered with now.
Mm.
There's so many things that are there which are unanswered. So it's really difficult to answer it in a way that, she would want me to, because I don't know what she's actually asking.
Yeah.
But I think the main things that she needs to think about is if there is physical abuse, she needs to get help.
Mm-hmm.
She needs to see if she can talk to her father when he's in a good mood. Maybe, and there is help out there for him. So there's anger management courses. Maybe he doesn't even realize. I mean, when he's violent, it may just be violence in shouting. And I'm not saying that's okay, because again, that's quite emotional for a 15-year-old to handle.
Yeah.
But if he may not realize it's having such a huge effect on her.
Yeah.
So just by being told that, hang on a minute, when you scream at me, this is what it does to me. Maybe the wake up call that he needs.
Yeah.
So, just maybe having that conversation with him. Sitting down as a family, if it's the fact that she's doing all the housework, maybe just sitting down as a family and sort of saying, okay, look, we need to make a list of chores and everyone has to sign up, and maybe having that on the fridge, and so everyone knows what they're doing, rather than expecting her brothers to help out, because again, if you don't tell them, they're not going to do it.
Right.
So rather than expectations, actually sit down and say, look, this is what needs doing. You're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do that.
And how would you advise in a family where that's not maybe the cultural norm, where I'm sure in a lot of communities, girls and women are expected to do a lot of the housework, whereas, boys and men are not. So how do you have any advice for how someone could tackle that? Because it might be the case with this girl, I don't know.
No, it might be, for sure. I think, again, it's having those conversations where you're having, try within the family first, just having a family meeting and saying, I can't cope. I actually can't cope. And telling them, look, I can't sleep, my hair's falling out, all of these things. So they realize how much of a burden it is on her, because she's only 15.
Yeah.
Up to now, maybe her mum was doing everything and her mum was coping. But you can't expect a 15-year-old to run a house, study, and do everything that an adult would do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and if they're not listening, then maybe actually getting the relatives involved and actually getting them to sort of talk to the brothers, talk to the father. It's important that she makes them realize that she's actually not coping, and not thinking that she's letting people down by not coping, because it shouldn't be on her at the age of 15 to have to look after her father and her brothers. That's not her duty.
I mean, even as an adult, I'm sure. I mean, if you feel like you're not coping, it doesn't matter, I guess, how old you are. It's okay to feel like you can't cope
and get help
and ask for help.
And it's asking for help. And I think a lot of people feel that when they ask for help, people will judge them. But these are your family. They love you. In the end, a lot of the times, I think, especially men, unless you tell them, they don't realize. If you're doing everything, they just assume, she's doing it, so that's fine. And unless you tell them that, hang on a minute, I'm not coping, or actually tell them, you know what, I need help and this is what I need you to do. So it's not just even telling them I need help, but telling them exactly what to do. Because you have to be very specific, I find, especially with boys. It's like, if you just tell them, I need help, they'll be, okay. And that would be the end of it. So it'd be, okay, I need help. I need you to hoover. I need you to, do this, and things like that. So I think it's really important. She needs to take care of herself. She needs to make sure that she finds time to take care of herself. I think she's carrying a lot of stress. I mean, and that's shown out in the physical signs that she's talked about. So I think there's a lot of issues. It's not just about her father. And also she talks about the fact that her mother passed away recently. Maybe she hasn't handled that very well. She hasn't actually gone through the grieving process. So again, that may be playing on the stress that she already has and things like that as well. So there's so many issues there.
So she should definitely speak to someone.
I think it needs to be a face-to-face conversation rather than a sort of a question that you can just answer straightforwardly.
Yeah.
I think she needs to actually go and see a counsellor and you know, talk to them face to face. And a lot of schools now do have you know, people that are there to sort of support the students.
Yeah, counselling.
Yeah, so and it's all very you know, again, confidential, so the you know, she doesn't have to worry that it will, you know, be out there in the public eye or anything like that. So
okay, well, thank you for that. I hope that helps the viewer that sent in this question. This next question is from a mother. She says, as a mother of 2 young children, I'm really concerned with how much time they spend looking at screens. I try and give them other activities to do, but after work, when I'm exhausted, I just think whatever and let them go on their devices. Do you have any advice as to how I can get them to stop going on their devices so much? This is, I'm sure, a very, very popular question amongst mothers. I mean, I know my own sisters are always trying to prevent my nephews from screen time. But yeah, I mean, for someone that works or even someone that doesn't work, sometimes it's just easier to stick them in front of a TV, isn't it? So do you have any advice for that?
Okay, first of all, she's not mentioned how young the children are.
Yeah.
I think it's important that, you know, below the age of sort of 2 or 3, they really shouldn't be having any screen time at all.
Why is that?
Because initially your neural pathways that are being formed through movement. And obviously screen time, you're just sitting there. So there's not very little movement. So, you know, you're actually stopping those neural pathways being formed in your brain. Also, there's so many disadvantages to screen time. The concept of instant gratification is there. Violence is there. You know, they're seeing things sort of flashing in and out and everything. And you imagine a 2 or 3-year-old getting used to that. And then when you start them at school,
you have to concentrate for long periods of time.
Yes, and you've got a teacher standing in front of you.
Yeah, it's not stimulating.
It's not very stimulating. And you know, if you've been used to that sort of stimulation, you're going to find this very, very boring. And you know, the pictures are constantly changing on the screen, whereas here it's the same thing. And it's, you know, so you're actually not helping them long term when it comes, you know, when it comes to their schooling and things like that. Also, you know, there's neural pathways that are formed which are to do with your imagination. So a lot of, you know, like when you'll notice children initially they move around, you know, they're sort of, even when they're not crawling and things, they're moving their arms and legs and things like that, and then they start crawling and then they're walking and they're into everything and they're trying to, you know, find out things, and then they'll get to a stage where they'll start role playing, and that's where their imagination comes into it. And they start, you know, the neural pathways are formed through role playing and through using their imagination. Screen viewing, also screen time reduces that because it gives you options. It doesn't allow you to use your imagination. It tells you pick this or pick this. If you do this, this will happen, you know. So it doesn't allow you to actually use your imagination. So again, those neural pathways won't be formed. So I think below the age of about 2 or 3, they really should not be having any screen time. Above that, minimal amount is allowed, should be allowed, but again, it'd be nice for you to do it with them. So if they're watching something, so it's not just them on the screen, it's you with them. And if you need to relax while they're on the screen, get them to sit next to you so you're actually watching what they're doing. So you're conversing with them, you're talking to them, you know, you're trying to sort of get them to look at different things and sort of look at it from different perspectives. And you know,
it's so hard to do that, because I remember I was watching my sister doesn't allow, for example, she doesn't own a TV actually. She doesn't own a TV, but when her sons are at my house, they are allowed to watch a little bit, but they're so zoned in that you cannot have any conversation. I think one's 6 and one's 2, but it's when they're so zoned in to the TV. If you try and talk to them, they just won't listen to you. They won't converse. They won't engage in conversation. They're just so focused.
But again, you know, by you seeing what they're watching, then the conversation's going to happen afterwards even.
Yeah.
So if you see something, you can maybe make a comment like, "Oh, that's not very Islamic," or you know, that's not good morals, or something like that. And then, you know, you can sort of talk to them about it and say, "Oh, what did you think of that? Why do you think I made that comment? What are your views on this?" So getting them to actually evaluate what they're watching as well, instead of just taking it in. A lot of the times when they just take it in, they think that's norm and that's okay, and to behave like that is okay. And it's not. Even, you know, even things like cartoons, which you think are quite innocent.
Yeah,
there's a lot of violence.
Like my nephews aren't they're only allowed to watch very specific things, but there's one TV show I know that one cartoon they're not allowed to watch.
Yeah, we weren't. My children weren't. I'm sure it's the same one.
And I think the little girl in the cartoon calls her dad silly or something like that. And little things like that.
And it's like allowing that disrespect,
which isn't okay.
Yeah.
And so my sister doesn't allow them to watch that, which I think is absolutely correct. But I mean, coming back to the actual question, this person's talking about when they're exhausted.
Yeah, so
it's
I think
easier to stick them in front of a television.
No, of course. So and I think first of all, realizing how damaging it is really, really important to your child.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think, you know, if you're working, obviously, you know, you're going to be tired. You know, you've come home from work, you know, a long day's work and everything, and then you've got the dinner to sort out and the kids to sort out and everything. But I think what would help is to be organized. So, you know, you try to prep everything at the weekend when you're at home. So when it comes to food and things like that, most of it's already prepped. So you're not that busy trying to cook dinner. And so you haven't got time for the kids. And then whatever you're doing, try to get the kids involved in that. So even when you're cooking, actually getting the kids into the kitchen with you. And okay, it takes a little bit longer, but it's, you know, spending that time with your children and knowing that they're learning from it. And you know, you've been out the whole day at work, they've been at school the whole day, you've not been together, and now they're sitting in one room watching you know, something, and you're, you know, in the kitchen busy, and it just seems like there's never a time when you come together. And then okay, you sit and have dinner together, and that will be it. So at least this way, even though you're having to do certain things, get them involved in it, and it takes a little bit longer, but it's so rewarding.
And do you think it's also about maybe managing expectations? So for example, just saying, because she's saying, do you have any advice as to how I can stop them from going on their devices? And it's probably a matter of, if you tell them you're not allowed, once you come home from school, to be on your TV or iPad or iPhone or whatever it is for more than 2 hours or 1 hour or however long you want to do it, then you've managed their expectation. They know, and you have to maybe try and stick to it as easy as it is to just let them.
I think that's the difficulty, because we send mixed signals, right? We say they're not allowed, but then when we're really tired, then we'll allow them. And once you do, then they think, oh, there is a chance, so then they'll keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and then that gets really difficult. So actually having rules there which then you stick to no matter what. And, you know, they can scream and shout, but it's not happening. It's, you know what the rule is. You've had your time and that's it. So managing, you know, expectations from them, having rules there, knowing what they're watching as well is really, really important. So if they're playing a game or if they're watching something, you need to know what it is. And again, like you said, you know, your sister, there's certain things that she won't allow. And we were the same. It's like there's certain things that my kids weren't allowed to watch. But then there are other things. As they get older, I think you can't tell them not to watch it, because all their friends are discussing it. So it's really difficult for them not to be part of it. So I think then it's really important for you to sit down and watch it with them, so that you know what they're watching and you've discussed it from an Islamic perspective, from your own, you know, values perspective. So what is Islamic, you know, the values of Islam, and why you think this is wrong or why you think it's right. So they're not accepting it subconsciously, because a lot of these things go into their subconscious without us even realizing, and then their behavior will act out according to what's in their subconscious.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it is a very difficult thing, isn't it? I think. And what about we're in a day and age where you've got screens everywhere. I mean, you can't, you know, I think 5, 10-year-olds, 6-year-olds have got phones these days. I don't know why or who they're calling, but it's how. Do you have any sort of advice for what the alternative could be in terms of keeping them engaged? Let's say you aren't able to bring them into the kitchen to help you cook, whatever it is that you're doing. Do you have any advice for any activities that would keep a child engaged? I mean, obviously it depends on their age, or
I think again, and it depends not only on the age but on the child as well. Because some children, you know, would love to just maybe, you know, have a car and just be playing, you know, on their own, and some children need a lot more stimulation. But having, you know, knowing your child and having things set up from beforehand, that you know that, okay, this is what they're going to do, or this is what, you know, again, it's having that organization is really, really important, and thinking ahead, getting them to even, you know, even if they're not in the kitchen, they're doing something, but they're helping in the chores, makes them feel grown up. Although, you know, we feel like, they're not going to do it properly, or they're going to, it doesn't matter even if they mess it up. So it's just getting them, oh, you know what, mummy's just got back from work, you've just got back from school, let's do it all together, and then we can sit down to eat. So getting them to sort of maybe just, I don't know, dust or hoover, you know, little things like that. It doesn't even have to be done properly. I think the other thing I would say to all mothers is, don't beat yourself up about it. I think a lot of mothers feel that they need to do everything perfectly, and it's just not possible. It's like we're not going to be perfect, but as long as you're trying, and that's what matters. And I think as long as you're thinking ahead and thinking about what you want for your kids and how you're going to bring that about, and trying to sort of organize yourself, then it should be fine.
Thank you for that. I think that's really interesting. Lots more to discuss there. I'm going to move on to the next question though. I've got someone here that said, I've recently started becoming more practicing regarding my wajibats. There was a time when I wasn't regular with my prayers, but I've worked really hard on this. My sister was always much better than me in this regard, but recently I've noticed she doesn't pray on time or even at all some days. Her hijab is always changing too. Should I approach her about this? It's just that I don't want to seem patronizing or preachy.
Okay, yes, she should. Simple answer. I think, as long as you come from a place of love, rather than a place of being preachy or holier than thou or judgmental, it's because she cares about her that she's approaching her, and she needs to make sure that comes across when she's talking to her. Not sort of, oh, now that I'm doing it, I know better. She needs to make sure it doesn't come across like that. I think one of the things that I'd like to discuss here is how important the salah is. I think, a lot of the times we don't emphasize the importance of it for ourselves. What we do is we tell our children that it's something that's wajib. They have to do it. God will be happy with them. They'll go into heaven if they do it. If they don't, they're going to go to hell, and God's going to be angry with them. But there's very little else said about it. And if you're doing something that is routine every single day, 5 times a day, it does get boring, and you don't see the value in it.
How weighty it is.
And I think I think the parents need to take that on board and make sure that not only do they sort of do it as a family, and bring it into their house as so that they're reciting together Jama'ah and things like that, but also just before you even get to the stage where you're trying to teach the fiqh, this is wajib and this is haram, you need to ensure that your children have a relationship with God, that they understand, what God means to them and the fact that God created them. Just being told that the creator of the whole universe chose to create me is such a powerful statement. It gives me so much, it really empowers me. It gives me confidence. It makes me feel worthy. So I'm not looking at other people to give me my self-worth, because the creator of the universe chose to create me. Things like that are really, really important for a child to know, to understand that he loves me, to understand that he'll never abandon me, to understand that everything he's told me to do is for my benefit, not for him. He doesn't require it. A lot of the times in the counselling, I find that when you have teenagers and slightly older children coming in, when they've been through difficulty, the first thing that they abandon is the salah, because they're so angry at God because of the situation they found themselves into, that they feel like God has let them down, so why should they pray to him? And it's not understanding that the prayer is for them, not for God. And this is when they need the prayer the most. But at that time, to try to tell them that doesn't work. So it needs to be taught from beforehand that the prayer is something that they require. In fact, it's really important for, I think, us to understand that the fiqh rulings, the wajib and the things that are haram, are not for the body, it's for the soul. And because we don't know how our soul works, God, out of his love and mercy, has given us the wajibats and said, you have to do this because your soul absolutely requires it. Stay away from this because it's absolutely detrimental to your soul. And what we try to do is bring it into the physical realm and into the physical body. And we think it's all about the body, but it's not, it's about the soul.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in this question as well, I don't know whether it's a brother or sister, but the person hasn't said that they know why this, their sister doesn't pray on time or even at all. It might be that something's happened that has made them sort of disillusioned with prayer and religion. So it might be a good idea to find out what the reason is as well. Yeah.
So it's important, first of all, to understand what the whole concept of the prayer is, hijab and all of this, because they talk about the fact that her hijab is constantly changing. Again, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So, and getting them to sort of, just, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about anything, I'm here for you. I've seen changes, and you don't have to go into specifics about the change. I've seen that, there's certain things that are changing in the way that, in your behavior. So obviously something's going on. Would you like to talk about it? So getting them to actually open up and discuss, sort of have that conversation would help them as well.
Yeah.
To see, where they're coming from is really, really important. And I think a lot of the times just role modeling it.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the times we feel like we need to say things. Yes, we do. I mean, part of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy Munkar is to actually say it, but it's also about role modeling it. So showing them that, how it's done and the fact that it's constantly done is really, really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good answer, I think. And I think role modeling it is sometimes a lot more effective than trying to, shove religion down someone's throat sometimes.
Yeah, especially as as your kids get older, and having relationships with your peers. Role modeling is much more powerful than what you say.
Yeah. Are there any hadith or examples you could think of? I think I remember one vaguely about sometime. I think the Prophet was praying in a mosque or about to do wudu, and he saw that an elderly man wasn't doing it properly.
And that was Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Maybe it was them,
Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam saw an elderly man who wasn't doing his wudu properly.
Right.
So rather than telling him he's doing it wrong, because they were quite young at that time, they went to him and they asked, they went to him, Uncle, can you watch us do wudu and tell us if we're doing it correctly, which one of us is doing it correctly? And they both did it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And the man realized that it was different to how he'd done it. And obviously knowing that they were the Ahlul Bayt, he realized what they were trying to tell him in a very polite and akhlaqi way.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It was very beautiful.
That's lovely.
Yeah,
okay.
And I think it's really, really important to sort of role model it for your peers. It's like, for example, when you're with your friends and it's Salah time. Rather than, you can say, oh, look, it's Salah time, let's go and pray. But sometimes it's like, you come across preachy.
Yeah.
So instead of just saying, just give me 5 minutes, I'm just going to go and pray because it's Salah time.
Yeah.
So not telling them that they have to do it.
Yeah.
But just telling them that this is what you're going to go and do.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good example. Yeah.
They don't feel like they're being pressurized to do it. But you're just, again, showing them it's important to you. And I think it's having that, again, confidence of being able to do things which are not considered as norm, but knowing that they're important to you. And again, you'll only do them if you think they're important.
Yeah.
I think I remember one of my children sort of asked me, when you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, how does that benefit you? It just gets really boring. And I just read then when I was doing some research, and I just read about how, when you're trying to climb up a ladder, it's the same action, but you're moving higher and higher.
Right, that's nice.
And the person had compared that to the Salah. So it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was saying to him, well, when you're climbing up a ladder, what are you doing? So, and we actually got him to do it. It's like we got the ladder there and we got him to climb up. And I think, okay, are the actions not the same? And he's like, yeah. And I think, but can you see that you're in a different place now to where you were?
Yeah.
But it was through the same actions.
Yeah.
And that's how the Salah is supposed to be. Through the same, actions and words and things, you're supposed to get closer and closer to Allah. You're supposed to move up that ladder.
Excellent. No, thank you. That's a really great note to end on. So thank you for joining us. We've actually come to the end of our show today. As I said, Heart to Heart is all about you as the viewer. You can always email us on hearttoheart@safirtv.com with any questions, any problems or issues you might be facing at school or university or at home, and Sister Masuma will try her best to help you tackle your problems and issues in a spiritual and a practical way. Thank you for joining us once again. Assalamu alaikum.